Hey everyone, and welcome to the Hidden Hockey Podcast. Again, my name is Matt Gordon. Really appreciate you guys being on here. I'm not going to go super long today. It's going to be kind of a brief one to start out today. So we're going to go through a few different things. The first thing we'll go through is just the college and European free agents that are available that I think will sign in the NHL or the AHL over the next few months. So we're really excited to kind of get through and look through these different players. I've labeled 6 here that I think are guys that could see some North American pro interest, and we'll see where things go from here. But there's a really exciting opportunity for these players to find their way here in the National Hockey League. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go ahead and talk about Dylan. I missed how they pronounce his name, but I think it's Hervokian, I think is what it is. But he plays for Northeastern. I've watched games of him this year a couple times. And talk about a player that is absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, Justin has drawn the news cycle a lot playing for Dallas and had his ability to kind of be a pest out there, which was really awesome to see. Dylan's a little bit bigger, a little bit better of a scorer, in my opinion. I think Dylan is somebody who will really acclimate very well to the National Hockey League. It's exciting to see that he's going to be able to do more out there. And I think he's done an excellent job at the D1 level for Northeastern. He's clearly one of their better scorers as well. He didn't have the opportunity to play in the NCAA tournament this year. I'm inclined to think that he will be signed by somebody over the summer. And, part of me thinks it's going to be Dallas is going to want to sign him given the success he's had given the success his brother has had, if you will. And I think there's just a lot to like here with Dylan Hervokian. He's definitely a guy who, really brings good energy out there. He's somebody who's a lot more than just a scorer. This year he had 37 points in 30 games for Northeastern, was clearly a top 6 contributor for them. And he's somebody who honestly has really caught my eye over the last couple of years. I've had him on my radar now since probably 23, 24. In his freshman year. And, he's really come through and been very consistent through the remainder of his career at Northeastern. So, fully expect him to sign a pro contract here in the not too distant future. If he decides to come back for his senior year, he's still going to be on my list for next year's candidates. But I would be hard pressed to think that he won't gain some interest this year from some pro teams. The next guy I'm going to talk about here is Antonin Verreau. This is an absolute phenomenal playmaker out of the QMJHL, who he's now going to Quinnipiac this year, and his freshman year this year, he still might decide to go back, but he was about a point per game here for Quinnipiac. A little bit smaller, about 5'8", 170 pounds. He's somebody who I think garners some attention, though, for sure. I think he, is an incredible playmaker, somebody with a lot of really pro attributes to him offensively. Defensively, I think he gives a lot more than he gets. So, for me, I think he might lean more towards the AHL route. But if he outscores at the AHL route, I think there's some definite NHL upside there with Antonin Verreau. To me, he's somebody who, he clearly a couple years ago played for Noranda and was a really, really interesting player to watch. Over 100 points a couple years ago at the Q. And I thought at that time he would get drafted. He was not, which was a bit of a surprise for me. I understand why he wasn't drafted, but at the same time, I thought this is a kid who was one of the better playmakers at the QMJHL at the time. And then, him signing a D1 scholarship and going to Quinnipiac this year, I thought was a real nice transition for him professionally. He's definitely going to be somebody who, if he doesn't sign this year, I think he will be a leading candidate to be signed next year and probably will be a top 20 scorer at the NCAA college level sooner rather than later. So, with him, big thing is his playmaking. He's, really good at managing space and tight power play merchant. He's somebody who, the skating could be a better. It's not perfect or great by any means. I would consider it below average, actually. But the IQ, the offense, everything else really translates nicely at the pro ranks. And, you have your fatal flaw there with the skating. So he'll work on that. And, will it improve? Great. If it doesn't, though, I think it will hinder him at future levels and probably be somebody who kind of falls within the AHL, ECHL realm. So we're going to keep going here. Yon Loshing, that's another player that honestly has not gotten a lot of notoriety at all, which is very surprising. Yon is a guy who again, another QMJHL guy, definitely played really well going into his junior last year, and then decided to go to the Alps Hockey League, which is a bit of an atypical route for somebody just coming out of the CHL. But to his credit, he's been one of their leading scorers for Kitzbühel. 27 goals in 38 games, 45 points this year. He's in the playoffs currently for Kitzbühel. But he's somebody who honestly, I'm very shocked that he hasn't gained, unless his grades aren't great, he has not gotten a lot of D1 interest. At least from, the fact that he doesn't have an offer. It's very surprising. Most guys of his pedigree do end up going either U Sports route. Not so much anymore with the new development landscape, but he seems to me like a carbon candidate to be a guy to go to the NCAA. Now that he's playing the Alps Hockey League, I think he will be a guy who should be playing somewhere in the DEL next year, or maybe even Liga in Finland. But honestly, I think North American teams should be watching out for this kid. He is a bit smaller at 5'10" and 175 pounds, but this is not a player that's, faint of heart by any means. I don't think he shies away from contact. I don't think he invites it, but I don't think he shies away from contact either. He's somebody who I think could be a notable piece for a team in North America if there was a decision to make that call. Another guy here, Mark Seaver. Mark Seaver is from Slovenia. He has been very under the radar for a couple of years now. Just decided this year to play in the top league in Switzerland. Had a game last year, and then this year he's really kind of split time between their second tier league and the NL. Doing really well. 11 points in 19 games for somebody who's only 21 years old. 2 goals in 2 games currently in the playoffs. I think this is a kid who's missed in a lot of different ways. Still technically junior age, which is surprising, to be somebody who didn't really get any sort of North American interest. I believe he's actually never even drafted in any North American hockey, North American Junior Hockey League, which is very surprising. But was ranked by Central Scouting in 2023. Was ranked in the 130 by Central Scouting among European skaters. So there was clearly some people watching him. But this is a guy who I think in the next 12 months or so might get a lot more interest on the North American side of things. He's somebody who has really brought it all together in his game. I think defensively there's still some work. Pretty decent skater, though. Offensively does really well. There's some real promising development coming out of this kid. And maybe it's not this year. Maybe it's a few years down the line. But, the guy who's recently taken off quite a bit was Ben Reitinen for Tappara. And, a couple years ago, I had him in my undrafted 2024 video. And he is now, 2 years later, one of the top prospects across Finland and really across the world. So there's guys that are missed. And I think Seaver is a guy who I wouldn't say that he is Ben Reitinen, but he's a guy who has that similar pedigree in terms of a guy who's really progressed through the years with his development. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a guy like Loshing, a guy like Seaver, guys that played in Europe for a couple years, decide that they're going to want to make the move to North America. And both of those guys, I think, are premium candidates to make their way into the AHL at the very least, if not maybe getting a ride here in the National Hockey League in a few years. The guy who I think is most likely to sign, has the most notoriety to him right now, is Lawton Zacher. Lawton Zacher is a really, really good goaltender. This is a kid who, again, was very surprised that he was not drafted. He's a late born 03. He's 1 day away from being a 2004 born. So he's only 22 years old. Done really well for Northeastern. Transferred from Brown originally. I watched him for the first time ever in the NAHL when he played for, I believe it was the Austin Bruins. I'm going to double check that real quick off to the side here. I believe it was the Austin Bruins. The Minnow Minotaurs in the North American Hockey League. I think he was playing the Austin Bruins at the time. But this is a kid who at the time I thought, wow, this kid is really a great puck tracker, really good at making stops, good hands as well, really able to be versatile and really manage his space quite nicely. I was very impressed with the overall skill set that he's developed over the last few years. I just caught a viewing of him right before the season ended with Northeastern, and both Hirokian and Zucker really stood out in those games. I was really impressed by Zucker in terms of his crease presence. I think he's somebody who has really gotten an advanced level of understanding within positioning. And, that's something that is a credit to him and the work he's put in, but also a credit to the development staff there at Northeastern for their goaltending. Zucker to me should be, I think one team in particular that would really like to sign him would be the Boston Bruins. I think he would be a perfect fit there, given that there is a real lack of goaltending in their system. It should be really interesting to see what he's able to do in the coming months here, if he gets a camp invite even, or if really it just comes out and he gets an ELC. Another guy I would have had in this video, probably a couple months ago before he signed with Seattle was Ryan Nevers. Ryan Nevers is a guy who had really good capabilities as well. And I think Zucker is on that track. I think Zucker is the most likely of this group. Him and the next guy I'm going to talk about, which is clearly on the screen. But, I really like Zucker. I think there's some real NHL upside with him. And at the very least, he'll be an NHL backup. And then TJ Hughes here. He's the next guy I want to talk about, the final guy I want to talk about. And then we'll get into maybe some more stuff in terms of different things I see within the college free agency market, and maybe even talk about some existing signings. So with TJ Hughes, you get a player that is a very skilled player. He's done very well for himself at the University of Michigan. This is his final year of eligibility. So he has come in Michigan and started out being a really just good tertiary scorer, but still putting up really high levels of production considering what he was his playing time and where he was at. But he's really grown into being a real leader for the University of Michigan. They've done really well this year, one of the better teams in the country. That's a credit to the work that, guys like him and the draft eligibles that are on the team and others have done. He's 24 years old, so he's a little bit older for the free agent market, but, I think his skill is clearly evident. He played on that standout Brooks Bandit team that went like 52-2 or something crazy. He was one of their leading scorers at the time, him and Zach Bookman, at the AJHL level before they made the move to the BCHL. But with TJ Hughes, you get a really dynamic player, somebody who's a very consistent scorer. This year had 50 points in 36 games for the University of Michigan. I would say he's a better playmaker than a scorer. But there's a lot to like here with TJ Hughes. I think he's a really intriguing talent. I think he's somebody who brings a lot of just a lot of really good energy around a rink. He's somebody who he's constantly skating. He's constantly monitoring traffic. He's very aware offensively as well. I'm not afraid to do a pass that's a no-look pass over in the other side of the zone because he knows where everybody's at a given time. I think, with him being older, I think he's more NHL ready than a lot of these guys on this list. But I think he's a really very intriguing option for a team looking to bolster their lineup immediately. I think he will be a guy who probably steps right into the National Hockey League next year. Should have some decent means of production. I don't know that he'll ever be a top 6 guy, but I could see him being a guy who plays on a third, fourth line with some occasional power play 2 time, and puts up 30, 40 points a year, at his best. But there, TJ Hughes is a guy I think who's got some real intrigue, and somebody who I definitely think you could watch out for and look to see grow within his career. So there's a lot to like there with TJ Hughes. So I went through those pretty quick, actually. It was only 14 minutes. But, there's some other guys that are out there. Maybe we'll go through and look at some of these other guys that have signed already from the NCAA. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. Obviously we look at Wittenbach's a guy who clearly has done well for Calgary, but I just missed the signings. Where did I have him at? You can hear my dog barking in the background. Okay, here are some of the signings so far this year. Obviously you can look at guys like let's see the last week or so. We'll go through here. Obviously, there's some guys that have gone on to go to the pro ranks here. Let me look at some of these guys here. Braden Burney's an interesting guy as well. I don't think he'll ever be an NHL guy necessarily, but he's somebody who I think has some decent intrigue. Bennett Shimmick is a guy as well. It signed with the Abbotsford Canucks. I think he'll be a really interesting player as well. Tyson Gross is somebody who's gained a lot of interest in the recent little bit here. I think with Tyson Gross, I don't know that I see more than bottom six upside with him. I've only caught really one good viewing of him, and I wasn't overly blown away by him as a player. But he's somebody I think could handle himself pretty decently in the pros. You look at Jackson Niedermeyer is related to Scott Niedermeyer as well. I believe that's his nephew, I want to say. And there's some other guys here that, have signed as well. Obviously, we talk about Sasha Boisvert and obviously the controversies with him recently in terms of, issues with him attending weight room sessions and things like that. I think Chicago will have to work with him to really get him in a right mindset, in a right approach. So, it's something to really watch for and look at. But, there's a lot more here. Brandon Burr just signed the other day with the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's a really intriguing signing as well, considering he was an undrafted free agent. Burr is a guy who, again, another bottom six contributor. You're not expecting a ton from these college free agents. But occasionally you do get a diamond in the rough. You look at guys like Justin Schultz, Danny DeKaiser, Tyler Bozak. There's plenty of others that I could mention. Those are the three that stick out to me right now. But there has been a ton over the last few years that have really come and contributed to the National Hockey League. Brandon Burr, I don't think will be a guy who does elite stuff at the National Hockey League, but he's certainly not going to be a guy who holds himself back by any means. I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm cutting through to get to the NHL with some signings as well. But with that being said, there is some, intriguing college options that have shown up here. Vincent Borghese is another guy, too, that has done really well. And I give him a lot of credit for being a smaller defenseman. He's done really well for himself at the college level, and he should be a guy who finds himself at least in the AHL level next year, and probably a pretty decent contributor at that level as well. All right, so we only got a couple on here. That's okay. We'll go here, and if anybody wants to answer, ask any questions, feel free. A little bit of a lighter crowd today. That's okay. A lot of you guys will catch this on a recording, and if you do, great. If not, it's okay. You'll see me in the next video, obviously. But, I'll talk a little bit here about, some stuff that's going to be on the channel here in the not too distant future. First off, I want to thank everybody for getting me to 300 subscribers. That was kind of my goal at the end of the month. It's already happened, which is tremendous. We're at 301 right now, which is awesome. That's a credit to you guys and your ability to view and keep, listening to rants of a hockey nerd like myself. That's awesome to see, and it's awesome to know that there's support out there for this little niche community that's building. So I appreciate you guys very much. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the well wishes, the support, everything that's out there. A ton of credit goes to you guys for growing this out, and let's get this going even more. So we're going to have a lot more content ramping up here with the draft season coming. I might do a mock draft here probably in April. I'm thinking I have kind of a top 20 established, but I'm going to go ahead and maybe do, I don't know if I'm going to do a top 32 or a top 64 or something like that. Probably a 32 because I do evaluate differently. And you guys have probably already known this. I do try to not let groupthink get into my approach to looking at these prospects. And it's something that I really pride myself on. So the things that are atypical are the things that I feel are the most interesting. And also I'm not trying to make picks because somebody else told me they should be ranked there. I'm a big believer. I let my eyes trust my judgment and, try to go about my business in a way that really speaks true to how I see and evaluate these guys. So that'll be a video I do in the not too distant future here. But we'll see how it goes. And, obviously you guys can let me know what content you guys want done. It's been, we've got requests, which is tremendous. It's great to see. But, I think there's a lot of intrigue with the guys that are, the content that we're putting out here. And I appreciate you guys for being on here, whether you're on recording, whether you're on live, or just spreading the word. Much appreciated from my end. Absolutely. So, yeah, we only got a couple on here. I'm going to go for maybe 10 more minutes. I'm not going to make this a super long one just because the depth of what I was trying to talk about wasn't really necessary for an hour. But, obviously with the European free agents that are out there too, we could look historically at the success of a lot of these European free agents. There's it's mixed results with a lot of European free agents. You look at guys like Vegas went really hard on the Russian contingent for a long time. And I think it really kind of went downhill with Vadim Shipchyov. I think he was somebody who really kind of, came in and had a real idea for what he wanted to do in the National Hockey League and didn't want to conform to the modern development scope that says you have to go to the AHL unless you're a superstar. He seemed to think he needed to be in the NHL. And the time he got, I think he was a little bitter in Vegas. I don't think he really did himself any favors, and I also don't think he got as true of a shot as maybe he should have. You could look at other guys like Mikko Lehtinen came over to the NHL for a hot minute, was recently in the Olympics, did pretty well there. But that was another guy who kind of acclimated himself a little bit, but then kind of pulled away. So that's the risk, obviously, with European free agents, right? You have the opportunity to get kind of a low-risk opportunity to maybe see if these guys have potential. And then sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. You look at guys like Fabian Brunstrom in the past has played and done pretty well. Damian Brunner played a long time for the Detroit Red Wings, was very familiar with him being a Wings fan. There's just a lot of, that's what the intrigue is, right? Having the opportunity to go and sign these European free agents and see what they do. And same thing with college free agents, right? It's everybody describes it as a free lottery ticket. And I actually think that's very true. I think with a lot of college hockey players, you get the opportunity to mold them into what you want. And, sometimes you get these 23, 24, 25-year-old prospects that come in and do really well. And it's great to see that opportunity presents itself. But Nover just gave a question in here. Thanks, Nover. I think you're new. I don't know if you've ever commented before. So hello. Which draft class do you think is stronger from a prospect perspective, 2026 or 2027? It's a two-pronged question for me, I think, with that, Nover. I would say that with the 26 class, the high end is really strong. I think with McKenna, I think he's somebody I wouldn't consider McKenna generational. I would consider him an above average prospect. And I would say the same about Stenberg, and I would say the same for probably the first 8 guys. With 2027, I think Landon DuPont's absolutely generational. I think he's a major separator and probably the best prospect out of both classes. Privalov is another guy that I think is a definite, I wouldn't call him generational, but I would call him a very, very good prospect. And there's generational potential with him. But it's too soon to say whether or not he will garner the same results that DuPont has. Currently, I do have Privalov at 1. And then DuPont at 2. But they're probably 1A, 1B for me. I would say the top end of 27 is better. I think the depth of 26 is a little better at the moment. But I would say at the same time, looking at like this time, the 27 draft currently 12 months ago, I would argue that the 27 draft will eventually have more depth. So I'm inclined to think the 27 draft is going to be better. But I also think it's got to weigh itself out a little more. It's too soon to say one class is superior than the other. But I'm inclined to think that the 27 class is better at the current moment. So thanks for that question. Feel free to put in more. Obviously, I think it's just me, you, and one other person. So, there's obviously with the drafts here. The other thing too is, a lot of times you draft these guys. A lot of times there's opportunities for these guys to kind of step in. And with college free agents, you have more immediacy, but with draft picks, you obviously it will be something where it could be a 2, 3, 4 years down the line. But it should be interesting to see what comes with these guys coming up too. Nover says, agree at the top. Privalov, DuPont, and Joseph feel a bit stronger than McKenna, Stenberg, and Verhoff. I would totally agree. Yeah, and I would put Joseph. I think he's not. I love Joseph, and I think he's a really gifted player. But I would agree that I think for whatever reason, I think Privalov has a bit of a separating factor. I think DuPont has a separating factor. I think Joseph has that to a certain extent, but I don't know if he's as elite as the other two are, which is why I have him at 3 personally myself. Um, is he capable of getting in that group? Absolutely. I think he's a dynamite hockey player. But just from my views and what I've seen so far out of these 3 guys, DuPont to me looks like the best defenseman we've seen since Cale Makar. Privalov looks like one of the better power wingers we've seen come out of Russia in a long time. And then Joseph is a guy who I think has done really well for himself. One of the better QMJHL prospects we've seen in a minute. Definitely screams like top 3, top 5 upside. With McKenna, I think he's in that vein with these 3. I think McKenna is a really gifted playmaker. I would argue he's probably the best like elusive perimeter playmaker since Patrick Kane. I think he's in that vein in terms of that skill set. Different than a guy like Bedard, different than a guy like Celebrini, different than even like a Crosby, obviously different than an Ovi. Stenberg is more of an all-around guy. I think he's better than Leo Carlson was at the same age. I think Stenberg looks to me to be like stepping into the NHL and get 50, 60 points in 2 years. Like he looks like that already. Then with Verhoff, I like Verhoff a ton. I think there's a throwback style to him. I think he's kind of more of a throwback vein defenseman. Really brings a nice edge, but also couples it with incredible edge work, great skill, a really booming shot. I think he's the best shot in the draft. There's just so much capability that's there, and he's truly a really gifted player. But yeah, I totally agree with you, Nova. I mean, we're in the same lockstep, but there's a lot to like with these guys, especially the 6 that you just mentioned. Yeah, so obviously there's still a ton of college free agent opportunity here. I think even some of the guys I mentioned earlier might get some camp invites too. That'll be stuff I'm watching for sure. Some CHL guys may get some interest, but I do think there was more intrigue with the college free agents and the Euro free agents this year than any of these CHL kids coming out. Just personally. Yeah. So we're on 27 minutes already. Okay. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them off here on the side here. I'm probably going to go for another like 5-ish minutes, and then I'll probably head out. I'm just going to do it real short. But yeah, I mean, some other things that I'm going to do on the channel here in the not too distant future. I might do a USHL futures draft preview here in the not too distant future, just talking about the top American 2010s that will be drafted this year. And then I think I'm going to get into maybe a shorter video where I'm going to talk about like the true talents that could potentially lead to maybe just the future candidates of exceptional status. I think I'll do a short stream on that. I can even talk about that a little bit now instead of maybe doing a stream of that if you guys want to hear that. But there's some real candidates here. I think out of the 2011s, 2012s. I know it's really young to talk about these kids, but there's a few guys that I think have some real potential to get exceptional status, which is crazy to think about because we went from a long period of time in the early 2000s where it was just occasionally handed out to now every year it seems like there's 1 or 2 kids that really rise to the cream of the crop. And at that point in time, if you have 1 or 2 kids every year, the argument is it truly an exceptional player? Or are we losing the meaning of exceptional player status? That's something that I think we're going to watch here, especially with the incoming development landscape that is, the ability to do the CHL, the NCAA. You can have all your cake and eat it too at all levels. That's going to garner even better hockey players, in my opinion, which is why I'm such a fan of the fact that they've opened it up. But I also think it leads to some interesting situations, in terms of rights. I think there's going to be, is it 4 years across the board now with the NHL CBA? Is it something where they cut it down to 2 years for everybody? So that opens up even more ability for guys to move. There's never really been a real ruling on that yet, which is very surprising to me. I think that's going to be something to look at over the course of the next couple of years. I think there's going to be some roundedness that's going to be needed, especially with these college free agents, with the Euro free agents. What rights do they have to go and explore after a certain amount of time, right? Is there the ability for these kids to, go and play all 4 years in college, and then, by the time they hit their sophomore year, they're able to explore like they have been and become UFAs very quickly. All things to watch and monitor. Obviously, it's been a little confusing for myself, and then I think for a lot of others. But hopefully, in the not too distant future, we'll get some clarity on that. But we'll see how it goes. I'm going to just do one last call for questions. If you guys have any more questions, or if you're watching on recording, feel free to leave them off to the side. I'll do a quick kind of a glance over everything. But again, this one was always going to be shorter, so I didn't want to go too long. But we'll leave some questions here for anybody else. And if you guys have any other non-related college hockey, European free agents, if you guys want to talk about anything else, feel free to let me, leave a comment. Or if you do it right before the chat ends, put a chat question in there, and we'll go ahead and get those things answered for y'all. But yeah, I think, I'm going to do a mock draft here probably within the month. And then I'll do probably a USHL Futures Draft preview video and then some other things. But Nover here says, any views on Logan Prudhomme? So with Logan Prudhomme, my thought is this. Really gifted player in terms of his offense. Skating really worries me with him. Being a guy who's as big as he is, he's 6'7", 220 pounds. Like, he's a massive, massive human being at that age, and you're naturally going to be a little more uncoordinated than the average prospect. But he's heavy with his boots. I think he is slower than the average bear. And that's something he's going to really need to work on. And that's not a bad thing right now because he's 15 years old. Like, he'll grow into that. He'll become a really good hockey player. Like, he will be fine. But that is the immediate thing I see on him. I think the hands in tight are really good. I think the shot is good. The passing is okay. I think he's pretty consistent passing wise. Now, if I'm an OHL team this year, I don't know if I take him top 5. That's just my view. I would be inclined to take him probably 8 to 10. I think I had him at 7 or 8, I think. But to me, I think there's a real project within Logan Prudhomme. If he can garner all that ability and that size and get it into a really skilled package, I think he will be a highly, highly sought after guy once the National Hockey League comes calling. But there's some work for sure. I think he's definitely, there's some boom bust potential with him. And it's something that I think will have to be monitored quite a bit, especially within his development. You're going to constantly want to monitor the skating, make sure he's got the proper strides. There's clearly still a lot of power generation he has in his stride too. I think he skates okay, but he does skate lumbered. I don't see a lot of leg bend. I don't see even really a lot of, like, he skates very upright. Is another thing. He kind of skates like he's leaned over, which isn't a bad thing, but he looks like uncomfortable, I guess, in his skating. So there's some work to be done there, but there's an intrigue with him as well. I think you're looking at, can you mold this kid into what you want him to be by the time he's 17, 18? And if you can, you get a couple good years at the OHL level with him, and maybe he's a 50, 60 point guy in his second year, might garner some first round interest at that point. I think projectability and frame alone, should his development continue to go the way that it's looked like so far, if he gets that skating to a really elite level or even an above average level, he'll definitely be a first rounder. It's just a matter of whether that develops or not. That's kind of my thing with Logan Prudhomme. So thanks for that. Nova, right? Yeah. Thanks, Nova. Wow, 35 minutes. Okay. I think I'm gonna leave it here, man. So I will appreciate everybody that's on here. Appreciate everybody that has been, will watch it on recording, has been watching. And Nova actually has a question here. So Nova, I'll go ahead. Who goes number 1 in the OHL draft this year? Skro or Nunabai? I'm gonna throw a wild card in here for you. If he comes over, Joey Cullen. I really think Joey Cullen could be the guy. Now, if he doesn't come over, and also I think Drew Daly would be in that consideration. If neither one of them come over, I do think it's Nunnebai. I like Skro, but I do think with Skro, I don't know. He's not a Schaefer. I will just say that. He's not a Schaefer. I think he's a good player. I think he's definitely going to be very successful in the OHL. Definitely should be a top 10 consideration, no question. But Nunnebai has that kind of dynamic quality to him. He's really good accelerator, like just, gets out of the blocks real quick, which is a great thing to have. Having that short burst ability is going to benefit him well in the OHL. I would argue that with Nunnebai, you have, they both have a certain amount of dynamism, Skro and Nunnebai. But I think with Nunnebai, you have somebody who kind of reminds me a little bit of Maxim Afenagenoff. Used to play for Buffalo, a really just fluid skater, pretty skater, but quick as well. But he's very opportunistic. And Nunnebai does a good job of that. I think he won't sit on the perimeter. He's somebody who is not afraid to take direct routes to the net. Granted, he might get bullied at the OHL level in his rookie year, but if he finds strength, he'll be able to find himself pretty well. I do think Nunnebai will go ahead of Skro, but Skro is a decent player. I don't mind him at all in terms of what his upside is. I think he's got some real potential. I would argue if Drew Daly isn't a consideration for the OHL, if he decides to go the national development route, I think Skro could be the top defenseman. But I do see the two I mentioned, Drew Daly and Joey Cullen, if they both decide they want to come to the OHL, I think they're 1-2. Thanks for that, guys. We got a few more on here. So hello for those that just joined. Feel free to, I'm just going through a Q&A for those that just joined. If you guys want to throw more questions out there, I'm on. So feel free to have me on here and, throw any questions my way. I did go through, for those that just jumped on, some NCAA college free agents that are intriguing. And then I went through some European free agents that I think are intriguing. I'll go through just kind of a quick nomer on them. If you want to watch them recording later, I'll go ahead and talk more about them later. But Dylan Hrokian is one guy I mentioned, Antonin Verreau, Jon Loshing, Mark Seaver. And then the last two I mentioned were Lawton Zocker from Northeastern and TJ Hughes from the University of Michigan. So all six of those guys, I think, are guys that will find themselves either in the NHL or the AHL this summer. So my mom goes hello. Hey, Mom. But yeah, so feel free to leave any comments you guys have off to the side here. Thanks, Nover, for all the questions. Really appreciate it. We can keep going if we have questions, but if not, I'll probably head out here in the next 30-ish seconds. So feel free to leave your questions here, and if they come through, great. If not, I'll get to it after. So yeah, so just future videos, like I said, NHL mock draft will come probably towards April. I will be doing live streams as well. Another thing I wanted to mention, I will be doing live streams for the CHL import draft, the USHL draft, the OHL draft for day one. I will do one for the Western Hockey League draft as well. And then obviously the NHL draft, I'll be doing at least a day one, hopefully a day two. I'm hoping I can do a day two draft stream. That did really well and kind of launched this channel quite a bit. So those are all things to look for in the next 3 months. Those are all going to happen. I'll be putting out some short videos. I have a short that went out on Joey Cullen today. If you guys want to watch that, feel free. It should come out here in the next probably hour or so. And then I got another video coming out tomorrow as well. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it here. Appreciate you guys for being on here. And see you here in a not too distant stream in the next couple of weeks. Goodbye.